I'd like to call us to order now. It's no different than in our principal meeting. It is just wonderful to have you all join us tonight. We are really looking forward to hearing you and so appreciate your being with us. So what I thought we would do to start with is that, you know me, so I'm not going to introduce myself, but we'll have the board members introduce themselves, and then I would ask Sandy to take over introductions of our title principals. And, you know, I was thinking today, how many years did I work in education and hear the word title before I really understood what title meant? It was just like this word out there. And by the time we get done tonight, I have great faith that all of us will have deeper understanding, more understanding of your schools, and why it makes a difference that we do have title funding for our children. So let me start with our board. We'll start with Shelley and introduce ourselves, and then we'll turn over to Sandy.
Okay, I'm Shelley Benford. I represent Central Boulder, and I'm now in my 7th year on the board.
And I'm Richard Garcia, and I represent Erie, Lafayette, a little bit of Louisville. And this is my 2nd year, almost completing, going on my 3rd, is it? Yeah, going on 3rd.
You go by quick.
Yeah.
I'm Sam Pupa at District D, which is North Boulder and Gun Barrel. 7 quick years on the board. And I just want to say one of my goals for the coming year is to get back to more school visits, and so I hope to be visiting you in your schools and see the great work that you and your team are doing. So.
I'm Kitty Sargent, representing District F, which is Southern Superior and Broomfield. And this is my 1st year, brand new on the board.
Donna Myers, just retired in May from the district, and represent District E, and 1st year.
I'm Tina Marquis, and this is my 5th year on the board, and I represent Central and North District, the parts that Sam and Shelley don't. And Gold Hill.
Tina keeps us on the straight and narrow because she's our board president. And a new state official. I'm sorry.
I'm Kathy Gebhardt. I represent District C, and I'm like Richard. I'm going into my 3rd year on the board.
And she's just been elected president-elect of the Colorado Association of School Boards. And so I tease her, but it really is an honor that Boulder Valley has that person on our board. Please. Oh, a student? Well, yes. Sam and Roy, why don't you guys do your introductions? Then we'll go to Sandy with the principals.
So, Sam Messier, Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Services and Equity, and I'm excited to hear from you guys tonight.
And Roy Holloway, Director of Humanities, Federal Programs, and Extended Learning.
Thank you. Sandy.
Well, first of all, thank you. We're excited. They are all collectively excited to be here with you tonight. I think as I turn this over to them for introductions, what I would like to share with all of you is that I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of these people. I've hired almost all of them, which is quite an honor. When you look at schools across the nation that are schools of high poverty, what we find is that oftentimes it's the least experienced and perhaps not the best teachers and administrators in those schools. And we do not move that direction in Boulder Valley. You have in front of us here, we have in front of us the most talented administrators in this district, and they have on their staffs the most talented, committed teachers in this district. And I think that's should be a source of pride for us in Boulder Valley. And so we're going to start. They'll each introduce themselves to you, tell you just a little bit about their school. You do have a packet with all of their school profiles in it, with their demographics and their enrollment over time. So they won't go into a lot of detail, but they will share one thing that they think is a celebration or something that they love about their school. So you just have a little bit of an indicator of how they feel, and then we'll go from there. Let's start with Sarah.
Great. Hi. I'm Sarah Oslick. I'm the principal at Whittier International. It's my 4th year there. It's my 13th year in the Boulder Valley School District, and I was a kindergarten and 1st grade teacher in our district, as well as an assistant principal, and I've seen a variety of schools. And Whittier is a real blessing. I feel amazed to get to work there all the time. It's one of the most diverse schools I've been a part of in every way. I like to say we have every type of diversity you can think of. So we don't just fit one demographic or two groups, or we have kids from all around the world, and we really celebrate that. Our entryway is an international balloon wall that shows all of the different places our kids come from. We have socioeconomic diversity. We have kids who are gender transitioning. You name a kind of diversity, and Whittier welcomes that and embraces it and celebrates it. And I'm actually glad that we're starting tonight with celebrations, because I think Whittier is a place that is celebrating a lot of hard work right now. My predecessor sitting next to me, Becky Escamilla, was there when full-day kindergarten started and when LLI interventions were put into place, and we are now seeing graduating groups of fifth graders who have had systems of support in place over years, and we are seeing a lot of great growth, and our growth scores year after year are very high. So I am celebrating tonight, as well as here to share needs that we see and we have, and the realities of what we do, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have done a lot as a district to support Title I schools.
What's LLI?
Oh, sorry. Thank you for asking, because I tend to speak in educationalese, so go ahead and stop. LLI is...
LL, I thought you said LO.
LLI, Leveled Literacy Intervention, which was a pretty tight model that the district adopted a number of years back for students who need reading support.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Becky Escamilla, and I've been around the district for a while, and I was invited to come back after 3 years of retirement to come go to Sanchez, Alicia Sanchez International, another IB school, and I'm delighted to be there. It's this, many of you probably haven't ever been there, but it's this beautiful little gem of a school nestled, surrounded by mostly mobile home parks. And we are a lighthouse for our kids in the neighborhood. We have a program that serves them after school with a grant that's running out. I should say that we are the highest poverty elementary school in the district, and our kids are really passionate about trying to be better, wanting opportunities for themselves, and our whole mission is to break the cycle of poverty and teach them to read. And so it's really exciting to be there. I love our staff. We have a lot of energy and spirit. I have to say it's going to be really hard to walk away at the end, but walk away I shall. They have been in the midst of the hiring process for a new person, and we'll find out about that sometime soon. But it's a beautiful school. We have lots of areas in which we need to grow, and everybody is there. Every teacher, every paraeducator, everyone who's associated with our school is really passionate about our kids and the lovely children that they are, that in spite of obstacles in their life, they're adorable and they want to have fun and play and have the same opportunities as everyone else. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity to be here to speak to you, because we really do love, most of all, to talk about our schools. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Gallegos. I'm the principal at Columbine Elementary School. I was there last year as an assistant principal, and this is my first year as a principal there. But I always like to joke that I've been with the district for over 30 years, because I went to Columbine as a kid myself, Casey and Boulder High, and so Columbine is near and dear to my heart. Columbine is an amazing school where students are thriving with so many amazing opportunities that our staff provides for them. The staff is phenomenal. They are passionate. They're hardworking. They go above and beyond all the time to meet the needs of our students. And we would love to have you come see our school anytime. It's a phenomenal place where our main thing is making sure that we're pairing high expectations with support so that we're being able to have students achieve their maximum potential. We have 55% Latino, 37% white students, and 8% other. And I would say that my biggest celebration this year is the fact that we have counselors at our school, because we're seeing students spend more time in the classroom learning than being sent out to the office for referrals for discipline. So I can't wait to see how that grows even more, and that their social emotional needs are met further, so that they can spend 100% of their time in class learning. So thank you.
Good evening, I'm Tanya, and I'm the principal at Birch Elementary. It's my 3rd year at Birch, my 18th year in education. Birch is a neighborhood school. We house in addition to being a title school, we have 2 rounds of preschool and English language development program, and we house one of the district's intensive centers for students with affective needs. So we're really diverse, both with special education and with poverty and ethnicity. As many of my colleagues can say, we truly are a diverse school. To echo some of Sarah's sentiments, we are just this year seeing our first group of kiddos that are graduating, having gone through full-day kindergarten, and we celebrated this year with the highest growth scores that we've ever had at Birch. We had an exceeds rating for growth on the park, so this has been a really good year at Birch, and it's just it's a great little neighborhood school.
I'm Guillermo Medina, and I'm the principal at Pioneer Elementary. This is my fourth month, so I can't claim that I've done much yet. But I do have to tell you, I was walking the building today with Sandy, and I felt like a peacock, just showing the amazing things that are happening and I don't want that to be my nickname moving forward. It just felt that.
Nope.
Yeah. But we have 500 students. About 60% of the students are Hispanic, and many of them qualify for meal assistance. We have 90-10 model, which means that 90% of the day we start in Spanish, and then as the years progress, we add 10% in English. We have great results for our students, and I actually think that what is best about Pioneer is the teachers. I mean, Kristen Nelson Steinhoff was the principal there before me, and she left the school full of amazing, well-trained, highly qualified teachers, and so it makes it so much easier for me.
Hi everyone, I'm Samara Williams. I'm the principal at Emerald, which is in Broomfield. So we're also a neighborhood school. We're around 400 students, including our preschool. 25% of my students come to kindergarten or preschool or another grade level speaking another language other than English. And I'm super proud of many things at the school. I mean, we just moved into this beautiful, amazing, gorgeous new building that we're loving, and it's just amazing and wonderful, especially after being in a building that was ready to retire. It's really awesome to see the pride the kids have in the building. So that's going great. I too invite everybody, please call me, come see the building. It's gorgeous and we love it. Kind of built on this philosophy of shared spaces and shared faces, so a collaborative and flexible approach to teaching and learning. And I'm really, really proud of the staff at Emerald because they've embraced it and they're trying new things and taking risks. And our kids are thriving and they love school. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our academic achievement. So we also did really well this year on Park, especially in math. We exceeded growth in all areas in math, so that's a source of pride for us. And then we usually have between 18 and 22 languages at Emerald, so it is also a very diverse school, and so we're always proud of that, and we like to celebrate all of our languages. And then I'll just finally say one of our mottos is that we celebrate every Emerald Dragon every day, and I feel like we live that, and that you can feel it in the building, so just overall proud of the school and everyone in it.
Hello, I'm Ina Rodriguez-Meyer, principal at University Hill Elementary School. I've started my 6th year at Uni Hill, which I cannot believe. We are 100% open enrolled. It is a bilingual school, dual language, which basically means that 50% we are 50-50. So 50% of the time students are learning in English, 50% of the time they are learning in Spanish. Our demographics are we have 68% of our students are Hispanic, and 27% are white or Caucasian, and we have 53% of our students on free and reduced lunch. Celebrations, there's so many. I think I echo what everybody said. We all love our schools. We're all committed to our schools. We have teachers that are committed to our schools, spend so much time with the children. It takes, I believe, a special teacher, a special person that's committed to work at a school that has this type of demographic. Some other celebrations, I really am so proud of the social and emotional support and skill development of our students. We've spent a lot of time with well-managed schools, PBIS, Second Step, mindfulness, which has been huge for us. And then, of course, with the added counseling support that we now have, has just really supported our students who need that type of support. I'm also really proud to say that our bilingual education in our school is growing. We have right now the numbers. We have 17 students in first grade on the wait list already, and we are filled with first round of students in kindergarten, students who want to come to our school. So that's a huge celebration. And then if I could add one more celebration, like other people said, our growth scores were amazing this year, and we're so proud of that. And it's because of the hard work, not only of teachers, but all staff members and district level personnel that are committed to support students who are especially in retirement schools.
You know, I have many, many years in education. I've always said that principals are the magic people. They bring magic to their schools. They bring magic to their staffs. And I think you heard, just how they talk about their schools that makes a difference in their communities and to their staff members. So I want to open it up to our board. I mean, I have lots of questions, but I'm going to open it up to the board because this is really about them. So, board members, what questions?
Before we start that, could I share another celebration?
Thank you, Sandy.
Ina Rodriguez-Meyer is a finalist for National Distinguished Principal.
Thank you.
Yes, she's interviewing on Friday, and she's very nervous about that. But I told her just be herself. She's going to be fine. She has so much to share.
Thank you, Sandy.
Cindy, too, we did have, we wanted Roy to give an overview of how a school becomes a title school. I don't know if that's appropriate to start before we open it up.
Let me ask for it. Is an overview of what title is and how we get there, would that be helpful? Mm-hmm. Roy, you're on.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let me first say it's a pleasure to serve in the capacity of Federal Programs Director and supporting these dedicated and talented professionals. And so the process for becoming a title school, it is dependent on poverty. That's the determining factor. So every year around October, we calculate our free and reduced percentages, our poverty percentages. And we rank order all of our schools in order from highest poverty to lowest poverty. And then we serve the schools in that order. Schools that have a 40% or higher poverty rate is eligible for Title I support. Here in BVSD, we focus most of our efforts on our elementary schools because of the amount of funding that we have and being able to utilize as much of the funding to support our schools that are in poverty the most. And so with that, we have 7 elementary schools that are served. We also have 2 secondary schools, Arapahoe Ridge and Justice High School, that are being served. And the reason why they are being served is because the state says that we must serve any school that is 75% or higher with their poverty rate. And so those 2 schools are above 75%, so we serve those schools as well. Utilizing the funds are designed to be supplemental to help schools to bolster the supports that are given to students over and above what our school district already supplies for our schools. And so you will hear my colleagues talking about the ways that they utilize their funding to help support students of poverty and struggling students.
Can you explain a little bit about the differences between and how they're designated school-wide versus targeted?
Yes. Okay, so school-wide schools are schools that are 40% or higher with poverty. That is the cut mark for schools that are school-wide. And so school-wide means that the funds can be used to serve all students in the school. Targeted assisted schools are schools that don't fall at that 40% mark, or they have just begun as a title school. And so we target the assistance to those students that have academic need. So it's not dependent. Once a school is determined a title school, then the school then decides what students are struggling in reading and or math, and then they can target the supports towards supports to those schools, those students.
So, a question then on that: if a student who is struggling in those areas is not on free or reduced lunch, are they still eligible to get the support?
In the school,
yes,
right. In a school-wide, not in targeted.
So they have to be poor and struggling.
And is there a floor for where targeted ends? Like,
let me get back.
Okay.
Okay. So just to clarify, a target assisted school can serve students that are struggling in reading and or math. The free and reduced lunch percentage is what determines the eligibility. So once we determine eligibility, then we can serve students based on their academic needs as reading and or math.
But only the ones in poverty, or all? Okay, that was my question. Okay, so it could be a child who's not in poverty but struggling.
Yes, if they are being served in that school.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
So 40% or above is school-wide. Yes. Below 40% is targeted to where? 40 to 30. I'm seeing 30 as I think the lowest FRL in this group.
Yes, so we typically have our cutoff at 40%. We have determined that for the schools that are right at that 40%, when looking at our free and reduced lunch from year to year, those schools, if they dip below that 40%, then that means that technically they are not eligible. And so we have had a school that this year that is being grandfathered for support because they fell below that 40% threshold and are targeted as opposed to a school-wide school.
And let me add that not every organization does this the same. So districts can determine their own rules for title allocations as long as, I believe, Roy, correct me, but the one piece of the statute that you can't ignore is you must serve the most needy.
Yes.
That's the part of the statute, but every school district will do it differently. And in DPS, I believe their cutoff is like 60 or 70%.
Yes.
It's very different.
Go ahead. So the number of students doesn't come into play because like the number of FRL students at Crestview is probably higher than the number of FRL students at Whittier. So Crestview won't qualify, even though they serve more kids, but as a percentage.
Yes, the percentage of poverty. Yes.
And so Ann Cooper did answer my RFI on the free and reduced lunch. I mean, I know the criteria from, you can go to the federal website to see what poverty level is, but what's our district process for parents applying for that?
Parents apply. This year we've used an online process through our food services department. And so at the beginning of the year, families will go online, fill out the form, and apply for free and or reduced lunch support.
And they have to do it online? What if they don't have online available?
I can help with that. So I'm sure all of our schools are the same, that we utilize a lot of office support to help people do that, because many of the families in our populations don't have internet. I tried to see if I could register on my phone, because most all families have a phone, and I couldn't do it.
And we've also had supports here at the Ed Center. We've had a kiosk where we have volunteers that come and help families to register online. We also have reached out to schools to assist families that are in need to register.
So then, does the family have to apply every year?
Yes.
Every year. Yes, ma'am.
Richard.
How do you determine, or how does the state determine, what's the formula in terms of receiving the Title I dollars from the feds?
The formula.
Is there a formula? How's
There
that?
is a formula, and the state has that formula, and it's pretty robust. I couldn't tell you the exact way that they use a formula, but yes, there is a formula based that the state will determine how much funding goes to each local education agency.
And then once that's determined, then you get the money.
We get the money. Yeah, the school district receives the money, and then we have a per pupil amount, and then we allocate that, as I said earlier, rank order from highest poverty down, especially for our focus is on elementary schools.
I believe that there's a function of part of it that's related to the census. So the census every 10 years is somehow, I don't know the details of it, but I know that was the big deal in my last district, to get everybody to do the census that comes out every 10 years.
Kitty. Yeah, I would just like to hear more about how the money flows, where it goes from the federal government then to the state. So does CDE?
Yes.
And then do you have to write a grant to CDE?
Yes.
Oh, God,
yes, we submit a consolidated application to the state.
Okay.
Explain that.
A consolidated application. So with federal programs, we have Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, Title IX, and we have McKinney-Vento. We also have family literacy. And so all those title entitlement programs, we consolidate into one grant application and then submit that to the state.
That we all do a little mini one that we give to Roy that then he turns into the big one.
Federal grants.
It's becoming pretty automatic now.
Ma'am, sir?
Pretty automatic in terms of...
Is it automatic? I'm sorry.
The data comes in, you just plug it in and it...
Well, we do plug in the data. We are very fortunate to have a talented staff of grant writers and also our business services staff that works. We all work in conjunction in building the application to be sent to CDE.
Can I ask a principal question?
Yes, they're all ready. They're waited. They're waiting.
Oh, yeah.
Some of you mentioned celebrations in terms of park scores or growth scores. And we've been talking just as a board about what do we look at just to see how the district is growing. What are your favorite metrics to look at? What do you look at most frequently, and what do you find to be most meaningful?
I'd be happy to speak to that. I have two things that I look at. The park growth scores are one of my favorite things to look at, and that's really only showing our 4th and 5th graders. So we are looking at our system across all the grades, right? And so the other measure that I really pay close attention to it's called the benchmark assessment system. And it's when teachers actually sit down with a child and read a book with them and ask them comprehension questions. And we get a level based on that, and that level corresponds to where they are in a grade level. And we find that to be some of our best data about how kids are growing, particularly with literacy.
I also, I was going to say, I know, but go ahead.
I also use the iReady data, so because that is K-5, and it is, again, also good to look at the growth measure, and you can break that down by teacher, which is really helpful to see how each individual teacher, especially new hires, are doing.
I was just going to say the same thing, what Sarah said. In addition, we at the bilingual schools use iStation, so we're able to measure the reading proficiency regardless of the language. So if a child can read, regardless of the language, then they can read. And so that's very helpful to us.
Are any of you using the Ames Web?
For certain groups of students.
Yes.
And then curriculum measures are also very important. So, for example, all of the assessments that are embedded in math expressions are really important classroom information. Probably not as helpful to you guys, but definitely used at the sites.
What other things do you look at besides test scores to see how your school's doing?
Great.
I mean, when I
What's
was
your favorite?
so
Attendance is very important.
So what I was going to say is that walking the classrooms and seeing what kids are doing, like in Columbine last year, and I always use this example, we got to a point where we would walk through the building and we would hear second graders talking about comparing Malala with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, just really, and that kind of work where kids are involved. I mean, for me, it's like the highest indicator. I mean, I want to see what they're doing. And then I want all the other measures to corroborate that the kids are doing what they're doing. But it's a very complex thing to do.
Guillermo's bringing up what I think is a really important fact, which is you really can think about the learning of children by seeing what tasks are they doing in school. Mm-hmm. So when you think about when you walk into classrooms, if children are only listening, that's not what you want to see. You want to see kids engaged in activities. You want to see teachers around the room. And if it's just kids in rows and they're listening all day, we know that's not how kids learn. They learn by their level of engagement. And the task will tell you, is this a classroom where kids are going to grow and learn? And what kind of tasks are we asking them to do? Are they at their learning level and yet have a challenge? You don't want kids doing everything they can already do, but on the other hand, they have to be at the level where they are. And that's part of the magic of teaching, is being able to figure out where those children are and what kinds of tasks make them grow.
Several years ago, we had, maybe it was 8 years ago, CDE came in and really hammered the district about having a disproportionate number of ELL students in special ed, and I'm glad to see that that has simply changed because it's not a learning disability.
What do you all do for parent and family engagement?
I can talk about that. And I think several of our schools are part of that, the FETS team. So as you know, Madeline Case started that, and now we have Ari. And it's...
FETS team stand for?
Oh, yes. Families and Educators Together. So I guess it was about 3 years ago maybe that this started. It was a pilot program, invited some schools to participate in this program, and basically what happened, we brought teams of people from our school made up of parents and of staff members, and we met out here in the district and just went through some protocols about what are you doing for parent and community engagement. And so we were able to go through all of these protocols and analyze what we're doing is working, what we're doing is really not contributing, what else can we add, how can we get our families that don't normally or are not participating in the school? How can we honor what they're doing outside of school? What resources are they bringing? What resources are kids bringing, et cetera? So there's a lot, and we have these conversations among all of us, and we tackle, I think, parent involvement in so many ways. You know, we measure it through parent-teacher conferences. We measure it through events and activities that we're having. We measure it through the conversations that we have with parents about diversity and social justice and the understanding that, you know, their child may not necessarily get what the child next to them is getting, but it's all because of equity. I mean, I don't know. You all can add to it, but this has been, I think, huge for our school, is to have somebody that kind of has taken hold of this huge part of educating children and has just gone with it and helping support our schools with that as well.
We also have a very strong Family and Educators Together team at Columbine. We host our meetings in Spanish, and we have the parents really be the leaders in this work and ask them what's relevant, what's useful, what's helpful for them to learn and explore and think about. And we're really building leadership among our Latino parent population through the Families and Educators Together, because we're removing that barrier of having to translate through these little things, and they can be, you know, be engaged in something in Spanish, and it's been phenomenal. We've seen a lot of amazing partnerships grow from here with the community, but then also between teachers and the students.
Can I question on that? So, do you have any parents who come who are not Spanish speakers?
No.
It would be good for the English speakers to be the ones who have the little things.
Right, yeah, and they're invited. We've done that. And they're welcome, and we do have those on hand if they come. We have had our school accountability committee break bread with our Families and Educators Together, and so because one night our Latino Families and Educators leaders made a big pot of pozole, and they invited the school accountability committee, and so it was a nice time for them to meet, and that's one of the goals that we want to do, is find more ways to have the native English speaking and the native Spanish speaking families come together. But it's important for us to also have a platform where families can come and you know, have these meetings facilitated in Spanish. So
may I add to that as well? I think one important part that I missed was the community part of it. Because of where we are situated, we do so much with the university. We collaborate so much with them. And we also collaborate with Boulder High, and we have pathways to education. We have students from Boulder High come into our school. We work with the Bueno Center at CU. We also work with the Spanish department and, of course, the School of Education. And so that partnership, they bring in their lens as well. And like Bianca said, you know, she runs hers in Spanish. We run ours bilingually, so we do both languages with the effort of really using more Spanish than English, but not everyone at the table is bilingual, and so we're constantly trying to translate, and we've actually given up on those things. We just translate. But anyway, and so just bringing the community and the understanding of the populations at our school, because many of the schools that are participating are the Title I schools, I believe, and in FETS, and just the needs that our school have and how they can complement the school.
We wanted you, can I say something real quick? Just real quick, though, we wanted you to know that part of being a Title I school is that we provide those wraparound services, after school programs, mental health, connect families with mental health services or other services in the community, learning a second language, and leadership opportunities, but also that we want to be those community schools because we're often the entry point for our families to all those services and all those
Resources. So I'd just like to add that our schools have lots of things in common as Title I schools, and I know that our school is more impacted, so we have a very tightly knit group of people who do almost everything of supporting our school. And that said, our parent engagement looks like families love to come when their child is performing, and they figure out a way to do that. Just setting the stage, many of our families are working multiple jobs. Good Times, then Taco Bell, the double shift, because at that minimum wage, it's really hard. It's really hard to make a living and live, even in East County. And so with those struggles, we try to offer the kinds of things that are supportive for parents. And so we're at the end of a grant that is this wonderful wraparound service that serves kids till 5 p.m. doing a variety of activities. And so then we get to see families when they pick them up at 5 o'clock. In addition, we're a site for intercambio, so families are learning English there. They will come because they're struggling sometimes to feed their families. If we can provide food and childcare, they'll be there. So we have a parenting class that's very active with 40 parents in it right now. I have a dream at our school, and so a requirement of that is there's a monthly parent meeting, and it's part of the deal that their child gets the scholarship at the end, and so the parents have to be engaged in that part too. And so, I just want to say that while all these things are beautiful, I don't want any shame and blame on families just because they can't, just because of the circumstances of their lives. They come to the things that they can, and many of them have very complicated, hard lives that they're managing in order to get there. So would I like a lot more parent engagement at Alicia Sanchez International? Yes. Yes, I would. But, I can reach someone on the end of a telephone and get to know them that way also.
So, you go ahead, Richard.
No, I was just going to ask a question in terms of what is the biggest challenge you all have in your title schools?
That's what I was about to say. So I think as a group, if we had to boil everything down to one top priority and one thing that we want you to hear, it's that our classrooms have kids with, the needs are just so diverse and so different, as opposed to some of the other schools in our school district. So an example is all of our kindergartens, we're going to have, 4 kids who have literally never been to childcare, never been out of the care of their mom or a grandmother, never been to school, don't really know how to go to the bathroom in a public bathroom, and a child who hasn't had any preschool, a child who speaks absolutely no English and is getting to is fluent in another language but not in English, so what's being spoken to them is different. And then a couple of kids over here who are ready to read and know all of their letters and sounds. And so our classrooms are very, very diverse, and it makes teaching in our classrooms, it's just different. 30 kids at one school is not the same as 30 kids in another school. And I think we are all really solid in our core belief that equity means everybody gets what they need. Not everybody gets the same thing. And so we just hope that you know that our classrooms really are different in the needs of our families. And we respect all of our families. You heard how much we all love our schools. But our families that are working 2 and 3 jobs, that's not the same as the middle-class family that pushes the button on the garage door and whips in, and their kids go to after-school fun stuff. So we just want to make sure everybody knows that.
The diverse thing of the teaching the reading concepts, do you teach the phonological awareness in both languages?
Defer to my bilingual school.
Absolutely.
We teach reading in both languages, absolutely.
And culturally appropriate ways. So we teach, like, our kindergartners are learning phonics in English and then syllabically in Spanish. I mean, it's just, we try to make it authentic.
But we don't all have bilingual programs, so that is different at different schools.
So you guys each got one counselor this last round of?
No.
Point four.
Point four.
Point four. So that was my question. Point four is helping, it sounds like. What would be actually doing the job?
1.0.
Every
It's
day.
like a taste, and we want the whole meal. It's a really good meal, but we only got a couple bites.
And I would say it's 1.0 with, we have a mental health therapist in our building, and the school counselor, and there's another social emotional support that I'm forgetting, but it's layers of support. So it's 1.0 and many other things.
The schools have social workers as well?
That's what I was thinking. My school psychologist who works with our students with special needs.
Just through
Thank
special
you.
ed.
Yeah, special education.
Kind of follow up with Shelley's question. I read through the student-based resource allocations, MOU, and one thing we did last year is we gave out counselor pieces. But we didn't really talk about just giving a resource that then you would decide whether you wanted more of a caseworker or more of a counselor or more of a literacy interventionist. How does that generally work? Do you prefer us to say counselors or just a resource and then you can apply the FTE however you want?
We need it all.
So the plan that we've proposed. This question is hard, but it is a really good question as the board thinks about resources. Because I've never met a board that doesn't struggle with that. Do we do a district program, or do we say, here's your resource, use it well? I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, we really wrestled when we put the counseling support and the proposal out there initially, because we asked ourselves, what should we do? But there was such a need across the elementary school group that there was consensus that counselors were the right role. They still get school psychs and social workers, but those are associated and attributed to only students who have special education needs. And we wanted this to be a general education resource. So the proposal for next year, as we would expand to phase 2, would give all of these schools a full-time counselor in their building, and then plus another couple of schools, Crestview, for instance. So we used a little bit different formula. We looked at not only the percentages of poverty, but we looked at the numbers of students of poverty. And ultimately, the goal would be to put a 1.0 counselor in any school next year that has 100 or more students of poverty in their school. That addresses the Crestviews of the world that have 21% poverty, but 143 kids.
So the point 4, what does that look like? A couple hours a day?
No, it's 2 days a week.
Okay.
But talking about doing the job, some of our students need consistent support because of the trauma that some of them are experiencing. And it's not a Tuesday and Friday kind of a job. It's like otherwise, and we support that. I would say principals end up supporting that effort as much as we can, but we're not specialists. I don't think.
So, Sandy, it was 0.4 in the 2017 budget. So
Yes.
for this budget, was there any increment for this year? Not for next year?
This year is our first year.
Okay, I thought we had already put some money last year.
We did for this year.
Okay, so this is
So
the
this
first
year
year
they've
that-
got the first year. They've each got a 0.4, and all other schools have a 0.3.
Okay.
So the proposal to increase for next year would give all of these schools plus 3 or 4 others a 1.0 and bring all other schools up to a 0.5. So we are somewhat differentiating and starting with the schools of highest poverty. And ultimately, the plan would be, if we could ever get there, would be a full-time counselor in every school with 350 or more students. But we think that this plan next year would be a good next step. I would feel really good about giving all of these folks the 1.0 counseling support.
So, I belong to another group called Education Leadership Council, and they've been really looking at this whole issue around 20% of the time the kids are in school, 80% of the time they're not in school. And my question is, have you all thought about that in terms of what are these kids doing when they're not in school?
I mean, Becky brought up the grant that's running out. Emerald had a 21st Century Learning grant that did more wraparound services, went till 5, had transportation. We no longer qualify for that because of our academic performance, but I mean, we all actually do extend our days longer than, the 2:30 or 3 or that kind of thing, and that's some of what title funds support, but when you use it for after school, then that's money you're not using during the day. So I think that that's top of mind for all of us.
And it's not just the hours in the day, it's also working with the families
Absolutely.
and knowing them and having trusting relationships where they're learning about what else their child could be doing and what resources are there in the community. And we have the FRS program, the Family Resource Schools, which is a blessing it's a partnership with the City of Boulder. And that person who's working in our building has been there 14 years and knows many of our families across years of different children. And watching those families learn what it means to engage with school is a really meaningful thing. And they start showing up at our evening events and they start coming to parent-teacher conferences. And that's all sort of a learning process that program helps support. So it's not just the after-school class. It's also the partnership with the families.
And then there's summer learning that is so key, and making that palatable and fun for kids so that they will go, because all of you have heard about Summer Slide, and for kids whose environment might not be literacy rich, and they may be home alone during the day while their parents are working. That summer program is so very critical, and we've talked about, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful to figure out a way to have school all year round, or something for some of our hardest hit schools with kids who just need that extra support, because they all deserve to get where everybody else does at the end.
And I wanted to say that I was at Columbine, and we had family resource support, and so we had after-school programs, and we had mental health that came through the city, and case management. And in East County, we don't have that at Pioneer, so that feels different to me, going from a Boulder school to an East County school.
Yeah, that's something I was thinking about when I was running, was because I knew about the family resource schools, and I don't know how we would get that kind of program for all of our other schools. Do you know?
Well, I can talk to it a little bit. I was in the district when it started in Boulder. We have five schools. So along with these 3 schools that are part of it, Whittier and Columbine and University Hill, Crestview and Creekside are also part of family resource schools. We attempted, and it's a partnership with the County of Boulder, and we attempted to have conversations years ago with with the City of Lafayette in hopes of partnering in a similar way, and they just didn't feel like they had the resources to contribute to that at that point. So I think it really is talking to city and county officials and getting them on board with how a partnership could come together. And of course, grant resources always are part of that and part of family resource schools in Boulder. Grants help that work as well. But it initially came from the city and county of Boulder that got that started in Boulder.
So,
in Broomfield, when we did a school visit, it seemed like that city was very active in helping supply resources. But it was a middle school with mental
the Broomfield principals have had multiple meetings with city officials of Broomfield around this exact issue. Here's a model. They already know how to do it. It's working in Boulder. And I would I would disagree. I mean, I feel like there's a little bit of, a lot of hidden poverty in Broomfield and a little bit of denial about who really lives in the city, in the county.
So the partnership between the city of Boulder and the school district as it relates to funding is like about 75-25 or something like that?
Well, I'm not sure what it is today. It used to be we contribute $160,000, I believe, and I believe the city contributed an equal amount. It was pretty much, at least when it started, when I came into this job, it was about a third, and a third, with grant funds as well. That may have shifted in the last few years. I've not actually been part of the conversations around funding, but I think our funding is still the same, $160,000.
Yeah.
So would we, being the district, have funding to be able to enter into these agreements with other municipalities?
Are we currently entering into this kind of partnership with other municipalities?
No, would we have the funding to do that?
We could certainly put it as a part of the budget process. Right now, I think the city of Boulder is the only community who's doing this with us.
Right, I know.
I want to just clarify one thing. CEF funds, which is some money that developers have to put towards the local community, a lot of that money did go into a big project at Aspen Creek and some facilities things at Emerald, but not like services or people or that kind of thing.
What funds are those?
It's called CEF, and
CEF funds.
I don't know what it stands for.
It can only be put into facility improvements.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, Richard, just going back to your initial question, there's no doubt that many of our students are going home to be raised by the older sister or brother. I've seen a lot of technology it's going to take over, and we know that our students need to read 3 times as much as any other student in order to work at their maximum potential. So I do think that that's a lever that definitely we need to be pulling, is how much time and support we're giving these kids.
Let me tell you what really concerns me is after Sam presented the literacy. Was it Sam that presented the literacy, or was it who else? Who was it?
Jonathan and
John?
Angel.
Yeah, we're looking at, I think it's less than 40%. Less than, or somewhere between 30 or 40% of our FRL students are reading proficient. It's something like that, isn't it? What's?
I'd have to look up the data on that for you. But, I mean, certainly we have a significant gap between our students who receive free and reduced lunch and our students overall in terms of their literacy performance. I think that's a very safe thing to say.
Yeah.
I can certainly look up exact numbers for you.
And I'm sure you all see that in your studies. And I guess my question is, how can we improve that? What do we need to do to improve that?
So one thing that I would like to say is that at our school, because of the way enrollment happens, people arrive and they just arrive, and you don't know that they're coming. They just have landed and they show up. So as it turns out, some of our classes, in 5th grade, we started the year with 30 and 31. And in the highest poverty school, that's different from kids who were almost all at grade level or above. When there are, in each one of the 5th grade classes, there's 10 in one and 11 in another kids who are on a read plan, which means that they're significantly below where they need to be, 2 years or more below. And so trying to serve the needs of those, so I'm so glad you asked that question, because serving the needs of those kids, they're in 5th grade, this is their last best chance to get where they're going. And middle school is the worst best chance, I guess, or it's almost too late. And so we can't send all those kids over to Angevine when they have that gap. And so one of the things that we need is either thinking about, having a cap of a few less kids in those classes, or alternatively getting some interventionists in there, because the reality is with 30 5th graders, for the teacher to do what is best practice, to pull them aside to do small group instruction, which is good practice, for everyone who's below grade level, for that teacher to cozy up a few kids and do daily to deliver what they need to start moving them forward is just not a reality. Because all of them, some of them were at kindergarten or first grade level, and the bigger amount of them are about in third grade level that are on those plans. And so they don't all need the same thing. And so during literacy time, do kids who may have trauma or have other needs, are they going to have stamina for reading alone while the teacher does 3 different groups? You know, that might happen on a good day, but it just is not sustainable. So more interventionists to help support reading, because we can't give up on our kids.
Do you have a half person that's a literacy interventionist now, or
we have quite a few literacy people. And most of them in LLI, and my colleagues can speak about this, the level literary instruction, it is designed not for those kids so far below. It's closer. It's designed really to help pull the kids up who are almost there. And so then we have this other group who need daily literacy instruction that may not be one part of one of those plans, but it's a real need. And so a good solid, many of those kids are English language learners, so having more ELD support would be really helpful. We used to have a lot more before the cuts happened, and so having more ELD support would be amazing. Or, we'll take it, another reading specialist to help support our children. So, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but you ask us what our needs are, and we're happy to tell you.
If we had a magic wand, I think that those cap numbers, the K in 1 has one number, 2 and 3 has another. Ours is the exact same as everybody else in the district, and I just don't think that that's realistic. The 31 kids at Sanchez is not the same as the 31 kids in my neighborhood schools of El Dorado and Superior. It's just not. I mean, if I had a magic wand, I would ask you guys to give us 3 less or 4 less of those numbers that everybody else has.
Sandy talks a lot about, and I just want to test this with you. I get it. I mean, I was a classroom teacher and a principal. I totally get it. However, all of the research tells us that pulling 3 or 4 kids out of the class doesn't make a difference. That's what the research tells us. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't make.
That is not what all the research.
It would not. I'm not saying it wouldn't make a difference for mental state and all that kind of stuff. But academically, it's telling us that you don't get a huge difference. But Sandy talks a lot about exactly what Becky was saying, having people to push into the classroom so that kids get more small group attention focused on the skills that they need. So I think that there are 2 ways to look at it, and I listen to Sandy all the time, but there's 2 ways to look at it, because we all think class size. And it makes you feel better, and it's easier to manage, and teachers are calmer, and I understand all that. But if you actually look at academic achievement, it's having the adults in the classroom to work with the children effectively. And so how do we begin to think about the flooding that you do, the right people in the classrooms, how we allocate additional staff? I think is a really important question when we're talking about achievement.
And I guess I was talking about just the overall number and flexibility in the school. Not that it has to go to classroom or to pull kids out, but a little bit more flexibility around the overall formula number.
Right.
But,
no, I'm totally with you on that.
I would say that these schools, it's not either or, it's both.
Yeah, that's what I was
These
thinking.
schools need to have a lower ceiling by about 2 or 3 kids, a lower ceiling, and they need the interventionists. That's where the key comes in instructionally, is sending that math specialist into their classroom of 26 kids, pulling out the 4 or 5 who need some skill work. Then the classroom teacher has a class that's reasonable of 21 kids, while the other teacher is working with these 5 or 6 who need a particular skill. Right. That's what we call differentiated instruction. So I think ideally, as I walked around these schools, a combination of a little bit lower class size in these 7 schools, plus the interventionists, and they decide, that's where the MOU would come in, that they get dollars and they decide how are those dollars best spent, in their schools to meet their particular needs.
I have something as well. Sorry.
Can I just ask one question? Because you talked about the 3 caps. And is it manageable to have 3 different class sizes? Or have you ever thought about K through 2 and 3 through 5? It just seems like a lot of juggling. You're laughing.
I'm not sure that makes so much difference. The biggest difference occurs, and when I get pulled in to talk to parents the most, is when we go from 1st to 2nd grade, because we're moving from a upper limit of 26 at kindergarten and 1st grade. We seldom get classes of 26. We staff pretty generously to keep class sizes lower in kindergarten and 1st grade. However, when you move to a cap of an upper limit of 29 at 2nd grade, oftentimes you're moving 4 sections of 1st grade into 3 sections that are larger of 2nd grade. That's when parents go, what is happening? And they call me in. I don't have, for whatever reason, the same thing doesn't happen from 3rd to 4th. I think it's just 29 to 31. And by that point, kids are more independent learners. And so it could be, but I think we'd have the same problem at 3rd grade if we went K2 to 3. But it is a sticky point, that shift from like 20 kids to 28 kids in a class. That's our reality. It can look that big.
But does it seem really true to you that by the time you get to 3rd or 4th or 5th grade that it doesn't matter anymore, that you can raise class size by 3 or 4? And I mean, it seems to me, why wouldn't you just keep it the same at K through 5?
Well, that would be lovely, yes. but the bottom line is that there's a lot more, in those first 3 years, we always say they're learning to read. At 3rd grade, they're reading to learn. It's a shift, and we do see more independence in students. I'll let these guys talk about it. Well, I don't need to.
I also think what's important is that the literacy support that we have tends to be in kindergarten and 1st grade, and by the time, and so we don't have as many supports 2nd through 5th grade. And so then not only are you talking about, the ratio being smaller in K1, but then all of a sudden the ratio does go up in 2 through 5, and you don't have as much intervention support. So having intervention support where we're able to be, we can flex it based on where it's needed in the grade level, and not saying, okay, you need DLL or reading recovery, those which are just 1st grade, but that we have the flexibility to say, you know what, I have a pocket of kids in 4th grade that need support, and I want to be able to put that support in 4th grade. So that differentiation of the funding, I think, is important, and that's a way that we also are able to reduce the class size. So it's not just about getting, like Sandy said, smaller class sizes, but it's about, well, what are we doing with the children? I, as far as I'm concerned, when you have 22 children and 25 children, you're still having to deal with all the different levels within the class. If you have the support and you have the flexibility to bring the support in there, then we can target those needs better, in my opinion.
6 years ago, didn't you have a full-time literacy interventionist in every school?
Mm-hmm. We shared. So I was a principal back then, and we'd have full-time literacy, but coaches, and they were shared with 3 or 4 schools.
Okay, so nobody ever had one in a school?
I think no. Well, if it did, it was a different.
There were some schools that had.
Yeah, there were some schools
that had a full-time.
I wanted to mention that another layer that impacts this adult to student ratio is at the Title I schools is our inability to really be able to fundraise at the same level and capacity as other schools. And so at other schools, we're seeing that the Booster Club or the PTA or the PTO can bring in $70,000, $100,000, and then that money can be used to buy paras, tutors, or other adults as resources to be able to put those resources into place for students that need that. And so that's another layer that we're facing.
And that's at our most affluent schools. So none of us have anything close to that kind of fundraising ability.
And I do hear you and understand, because having worked as an instructional interventionist here in the district and a teacher at Arapahoe Ridge, where it is also Title I, I know that I always called it caseload. Caseload matters, classroom size matters, and those interventionists matter. So there's a lot of supports needed. I think it makes a difference.
May I say something?
Can I?
No, my turn.
Because I'll forget, I'm older than you.
No, you're not. But actually, speaking of being old, I mean, I've been, this is my 30th year in a Title I school, and I am convinced that what really makes the difference is that classroom teacher, but not in our Title I schools. It's not 1 year yes, and then the next year no, and then the year. It has to be consistent every year with that amazing teacher in front. So anything that we can do to make sure that that is the case every year, that we have the best teachers in front of the students. And of course, interventions to support. But I think that the foundation the biggest lever is that amazing teacher consistently every year for the students. And then the other thing that I wanted to add is that when it comes to interventions, in intermediate grades, the cognitive load and the language load of the students continues to increase. So I came to the United States, and 6 months later, and I'm not joking, I was taking zoology. And so, how did you think that went? I mean, it was horrible. I mean, I could speak English, but I didn't have the academic language. And I was constantly working really hard at putting it together. And that's what's happening with our students in the intermediate grades. So I totally agree that we have to get them to reading as fast as we can, but that's not where the job ends with a second language learner. I mean, that's almost the start of the work that they have to do to understand and to make that work.
And then I'll ask.
I just want to make one more point that it's a population that I don't want us to forget, and that is we see this urgency for our children who are not meeting grade level expectations, but there is that urgency for those children that are exceeding grade level expectations. And so we have them in front of us. And because we have this urgency, and regardless of what language they speak and which is their first language, we have them. We're like, okay, they're going to be okay, but this child is not reading. And so the teacher is having to try to figure out, okay, how do we support? Who do we support? How do we manage this time? So by having additional support, it frees up and gives opportunity to support all children, not just the children that aren't reading at grade level, but those children, and we all know that children that are talented and gifted or that are exceeding also need support. So we can't forget about them as well. And we have them at all our schools as well. So.
Well, to your point, Guillermo, what could we be doing to support those teachers? Because what you hear, I have obviously never taught in a school like that, is that it's a higher burnout rate for teachers who teach in the title schools, and to keep those teachers engaged and supported, are there things we could be doing differently to help support them?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of passionate teachers, but one thing that happens is that, and please help me out, but I have seen teachers that, I mean, this burns you out. I mean, you have to give opportunity to teachers when a teacher says, I need a change, to be able to make that change, and then incentivize. I don't think it's monetarily necessarily the best teachers to come work in schools like Pioneer. I mean, does that make sense? I mean.
So a worry I have this year is that 3 of my new hires that are wonderful, fabulous teachers, that I'm going to get my number on staffing, which is going to be like 2 kids in 1 grade level, and I'm going to have to, I'm not kidding, and I'm going to have to let a really hotshot teacher go because our staffing is very unstable. in the title schools. Like our colleagues that they can have open enrollment, they can take their 31 kids, they never have to worry about letting a great teacher go. We worry about this every single year. Like, lose sleep about you got them to leave another school district, come work at this school. And because of this instability, I mean, that's why I brought up the thing about the 3 or 4 kids, because I might not have them right now, but I'm going to have them in April because it's just not stable at our schools like it is at other schools. So people say, well, wait, is this position going to be eliminated in a year? And I say no, but actually I can't really say that because it's very up and down in our schools with a lot of mobility.
And we wouldn't change it at all, but there's inequity in teacher load. Because when you do a read plan, if you have children who are below grade level in reading, that is many hours worth of work on the teacher's part. And if they have 10 of them, then it just feels impossible. And so then if I hire them a sub so that they can get that done, then they're writing lesson plans for 5 hours the night before. So, some other kinds of support and people pushing in to help support, because it's not just read plans. It's when we have an ELD population, there's paperwork, there's a can-do indicators, there are all kinds of things that is layered on top. And then most of us have some kind of a program in our school too, and so that adds another layer too.
And then you add the fact that I would love to know the numbers, but I think we have a more mobile population, right? And so you welcome 3 new students that year. One of them is the highest need student you have. They don't have any plan that comes with them, and you're learning from the beginning about that student and scrambling to meet their needs. And then they're gone 2 months later, and then then the 5th grade swells to 31, and the fluctuation in numbers at the school is a big piece. And then when you partner that with the fluctuation and the instability of funding streams, you've heard a lot about grants tonight. We've had budget cuts that are still affecting some of our schools. And, for us, our special education staffing has gone up and down. We got an ELD cut a couple of years ago. So when you add this fluctuation in all these supports, these interventions are the least stable. And then you add the fluctuation in the student population, and you partner all that together, and you talk about the teacher load. You really are asking more of the teachers. And I will say I think we have the best teachers and the best staff, and they're doing a lot of hard work every day.
So how do you eliminate that?
Well, I think that to answer your question a little, I think bringing in the counselor at a full-time level really eases the burden of the classroom teacher, because the classroom teachers are dealing with so much of that on a day-to-day basis. The ability to bring in that social emotional support in a full-time capacity so that the counselor really knows those children, right, I think will help immensely. And honestly, 2 days a week has been incredible for us. And just thinking optimistically about full-time would be, I think, really a good resource for our classroom teachers to just ease some of their burden.
So, Shelley, can I just ask one follow-up question? So all of you have higher than district and state percentages in special ed, so to your point about the teachers, how are you managing that? Is it...
Once again, incredible staff, right?
Part-time counselor, part-time cheerleader. I mean, the principals. Our staffs work really, really hard.
And part-time counselor, I think it would be helpful for us as a board to hear more measures and metrics on how that has impacted your school. And like we have fewer office referrals. We have fewer kids spending, and how much, because we've asked that question because we don't have a climate survey. It's coming back, but we didn't, to see what impact that was having. I think that would help us on making future decisions to see some exact. And so I would encourage you to have that data.
Tammy Lawrence is actually collecting some of that data. I mean, we've only had these folks in the school since August.
I understand that they've already said that they
exactly, and I'd love for them to share some of their anecdotal, even if it isn't that specific. But Tammy has set out several metrics like that she's paying attention to, that I think she'll be ready to bring forward to you soon. Some of it, and the caveat to that is to remember that this year these counselors are spread amongst 3 schools each. So their ability, I think their frustration is that their job is to get to know kids, but when they're getting to know kids in 3 different schools for a day to 2 days a week, they're finding it, they'd like to make more of an impact.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful. I just hear them saying, what an impact, so I just want to see that.
Let several of them share some of that.
While they're thinking about it, let me ask a question. So I'm hearing what you're saying about staying awake, wondering if you're going to have a staff member taken away because your numbers are not stable. What policy could be in place that would prevent that fear from year to year?
I think if Sandy had the ability to have a little bit more flexibility around staffing these 7 schools, like right now we all have the same formula. So she just takes the number we have, divides it by the formula, and the same number goes out to all the schools. So the affluent schools can just open enroll kids to the top number. They never have to worry about it. That's why I said the number, like if the ceiling for us was a little bit lower, that would help tremendously.
And that's all it would take is a lower staffing ratio for your schools.
That would help.
So, like, we need to have more teachers because you can't. I mean, Sandy can't just change her ratios for these schools and then say, "But I'm going to staff all the other schools at the same level." So, when you change ratios and when you say we want to decrease class size in one set of schools or another, you are going to need more classroom teachers. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just don't think there's any way we could do it without increasing staffing.
Right. We had 7 years ago, we had a differentiated funding formula for these schools. And it was, I don't know that any of you were in your schools.
This is my 6th year, and the year I came was the year before it had been eliminated.
But we had staffed, I think, 18 to 1 at K through 2, and then 25 to 1 at 3 through 5. That was the differentiated. So it really did provide it. It did cost more teachers for sure. And but when they lost that, the rationale behind that was, well, these schools already get titles, so. Right. But really, it was a huge negative impact on these schools to lose that. Robin and I do make it a priority as we're sending out staffing that we use some of our reserves to fix the problems in these schools before we ever staff them. So these schools get about a third at least of our reserve in these schools. And still, we ended up this year with 30 and 31 kids in Sanchez's 5th grade. So despite our best efforts on that, 30 and 4th grade. So we still have pockets. But again, when an appeal comes through, we start at kindergarten, 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade. With the funds that we have, we fix them in the primary grades. We don't fix them in these upper grades, which is why we have the problem. We run out of resources.
We've got to get that fixed before you leave.
I'm trying to get a lot fixed before we leave. Before I leave.
So I would say, too, in the student-based resource allocation MOU committee, that was one vehicle for addressing the issue. Obviously not a total fix, but so that supplemental monies with greater flexibility follow individual students. So I would see
what recommendations are.
Yeah.
Yes.
And something we're supposed to vote on eventually? We don't know.
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, this MOU,
Okay.
this MOU committee came out of the last round of negotiations with BVEA, and the work of the committee was concluded approximately a year ago, a little over a year ago. And so the work of primarily BVEA members, but with some administrators, including representatives from title schools, was to address the need for some sort of flexible and differentiated funding that immediately follows students as they are mobile within our system, so that there were some guaranteed monies that principals had the flexibility to use in whatever ways were most needed at that moment for the students that they have in their buildings that year.
No, I mean, I just like the idea of approaching it with just more flexible funding rather than setting new hard and fast rules, just because, enrollment instability happens in a lot of schools, and it's unpredicted, and you do have just a grade level, so it doesn't, giving everyone one counselor, giving everyone one literacy interventionist or two less in a classroom doesn't solve the problem for the other 5 or 4 grades, and I'm personally an advocate for the flexibility. I think Sammy knows that, but
I think it's, again, both. I like to set like a floor of what makes the most sense for all schools and then differentiate over that.
I think that's why the MOU makes a lot of, it explains a lot to me now, hearing you all talk on the need for the MOU and the purpose why the MOU was established in the first place. And I think we've got to be real cognizant of that now. At least I'm going to be real cognizant of that now. And I'm hoping that that's going to be part of the conversations when we start our budget discussions. I just want to ask one question, because Samara, you mentioned a little bit around school readiness. Kids get to your school, sometimes they don't even know how to use the bathroom or any of that stuff. What could the rest of you talk a little bit more around school readiness? What do you see some of the issues around kids coming to your schools? And because the reason I'm asking that is the achievement gap does not start in the 3rd grade.
Totally agree.
Or when they get to school. It starts way before that, and I think I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, I think, at least at our school, there's been this real push to recruit families and call families, and we know siblings. We know when mom is pregnant, and we, in 3 years that child can enter our preschool. So we're really proactive about signing up our children for our preschools. But having said that, we also have families, for whatever reason, or for many reasons, choose not to bring their children to preschool. It's this mindset of, they're too young, they're too, you work outside of, with the community on these various issues as well. And so we're kind of left with, some things that are out of our control. We really push. We have, we've been to community centers to advocate for preschool, to bring families in to start preschool, because that's huge for us, for our Title I schools. But we're a little bit at the mercy of what the families decide they want to do.
Some just don't want to send their child to school until they're 5. That's the bottom line. And the half day is another problem. If you're working and our programs are half days and not on 1 day a week, that's a real challenge for a working parent. So.
I have a question. What's the difference between biliteracy and bilingual?
Who wants to answer that one?
For instance, when we were at Columbine, we had a biliteracy program, which meant that we had a dual language program, but it was just literacy. So English and Spanish literacy, but all of the content was then taught in English. So it's just the literacy piece. In a bilingual program, you teach content through both languages.
Okay. So bilingual seems more comprehensive in both languages.
So you're teaching content. That's how I think of it. You teach content through 2 languages.
Biliterate is being able to read, write, speak in both languages, in Spanish or English or whatever the partner language is. All 4 domains.
I wanted to go back to your question about the success that we're seeing thanks to the counselors that we have in our building. Specifically at Columbine, one of the ways that we've seen this has made a huge impact in our school is through the implementation of second step curriculum, and that's led through our counselor. And so Ralph is amazing. He'll go into the classrooms once a week and have these amazing lessons on bullying prevention, about the zones of regulation, about identifying your feelings, about what it looks like when you're sad, mad, what are ways that we can self-regulate. And so that's making it so that Columbine has shared language for talking about through the announcements, through solving conflict in the playground, through how do we share, and all of these things that really helps us have a shared language that should, it needs to be a curriculum, just how we have math and reading and writing. This social emotional curriculum is a foundation that our counselor is leading.
And if I can add to that, it's about the counselor being the specialist that kind of leads the efforts, but the real difference that we see is when our teachers begin to own that and utilize the learning and the teaching that our counselor, the specialist, has been doing within the classroom, because it's not just one lesson and then everybody knows what's going on, but it's embedded throughout the day. Teachers are practicing the vocabulary, the lessons, the problem-solving skills, and then also adding the parent component to that as well, and helping parents understand what is it that we're teaching in terms of social emotion. But it is another layer of, oh my gosh, I need to teach this child how to read, and then they're behind in math, and now we have to do the, social emotional skill development, which, in my opinion, is the first thing. It's the foundation. If we need those problem-solving skills and those supports and et cetera, and then all the other.
Ability to regulate. We're getting kids. I want to say this for myself. Like I said several times, this is my 30th year, but kids are coming to us with more challenges regulating, and I don't know what that is about. And one thing that we teach at Columbine is not only the social emotional skills, but how to. But where I am, yeah, can I have one brain? So.
That's good.
We lost your thought.
Sorry.
Well,
I'm
I
sorry.
was going to say that she's actually the one that's losing in that pair. But what I was going to say is that it's also teaching the kids how to regulate, and when something happens at home or in the playground, what strategy to pull to then be able to go, okay, I can do this like our kids do, like faucet, and then they go there. They have all these skills, and that's what I ask them when they come into my office. Okay, what is it that what strategy are you going to use now to calm yourself? And they go like, and so that's what we're teaching them, so that they can learn.
So I know on the conflict resolution training, it's important for the kiddos, but the parents to know this as well. And I know Anna and Leslie Geiser, they teach some parenting classes.
Yep. They're at Whittier right now.
Yep, we've hosted them. Yeah.
Yep. So are your parents? I last heard from Anna, maybe it was a week or two ago, and she said she had some good attendance. But
absolutely, it was very successful. The counselors has also had a totally side benefit that I didn't think was going to. Well, I just didn't think about it. My social worker, whose job it is to work with 10 kids who have an emotional disability, per an IEP, is significantly more effective with those 10 kids, because she's no longer trying to do the whole school, in her spare time in between kids. So she gives all her attention to those kids, and significant decrease in behaviors from kids that have an identified emotional disability. So that is a wonderful benefit of having the counselor there 2 days a week.
And also the kids who struggle are learning that language already, so that when they walk into our office, they're ready to go to the next level, not just start at the beginning.
And to piggyback on to what Guillermo said,
got us excited.
I'm sorry.
Nice. I said they got us excited.
Oh yeah, they did.
Keep going.
Is that if I could say one thing about counseling that is directly related to learning, it is helping our kids who are dysregulated become available for learning. Mm-hmm. Because if they're not, the best teacher in the world can't really get through to them, and it's urgent that we break that cycle of poverty and teach them the things they need to do to go on to the next level.
You know, just a quick comment here, Guillermo, when you were talking about the self-regulation and all of that, and then you mentioned parenting classes, and parenting classes are existing in the school setting, but when you're getting the kids for the first time, that's when you start seeing all those issues around self-regulation because they don't know.
Absolutely.
And so that's a dilemma. Those 0 to 3, 0 to 4, before you even get them.
And what we know about brain, I was going to say, I'm sorry, brain surgery, I'm tired, but brain research is that kids in those years create these pathways that then that's how they cope. And so we need to then undo all that when they get into kindergarten and then give them the strategies to make it work in a school setting. But I do feel that a lot of those patterns are set up.
Right.
Or
work with the families before you get them.
Absolutely.
So that they can work with their kids on self-regulation. Yeah.
And just in my time in the district, I've seen preschools grow. I've seen all-day kindergarten become regular for our schools. I've seen Child Find being a really strong system. I think pediatricians refer families to Child Find a lot. So I do think there are a lot of efforts there, and I think it can continue to build its own momentum and expand to more students.
The question in the structure of the MOU, could a principal use resources for full-day preschool, or is that out of the purview?
Well, I think when we originally looked at the MOU, we were looking at K-12, not necessarily PK-12, since so much of PK is funded at the state or even federal level. But the idea was that within boundaries to be determined in the future by the board, upon allocation of the funds, that those boundaries would be, the parameters would be created for schools so that we knew that those funds were targeted. So I think that would be the topic of a future conversation. Sounds like a good idea to me?
Well, you guys are wonderful. Thank you for giving us your time. I know how precious time is, and I know how many nights you're already out. And I know that the thought of going home, sometimes you go, I get to go home. It's so amazing. And I've lived that, and I know how it feels. And I just want you to know how much it mattered to us as a group to hear you talk about your schools. And I just want to point out, it always is incredible to me how much love comes through when people talk about their schools and their teachers and their kids and their communities. So I just want to say thank you for the magic and love you're giving those schools and those communities.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bianca.
You guys.
A few meetings ago, when you brought your UIP to the board for approval, and we went through some conversations around it. One of the things I failed to do was to congratulate you on your UIP, and I want to do that for you. So thank you so much for that.
I hope that you can come as much as you can to our schools, because sometimes the scores don't tell the story. And I think that, I know for a fact that I would be like a peacock showing you my skills. And these guys would be too.
Absolutely.
But please do come, because that means a lot to us. And I've never had this opportunity, so I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. I have made my rounds to all the Title I schools, but I'll do another cycle. So.
Thanks so much.
Once is never enough for teachers.
Yeah, come see the 2.0.
Like I said, I'm privileged to be there.
Thank you so much.
Lovely.
Yeah.